From What Jesus Saw from the Cross by Father Antonin Gilbert Sertillanges. The chalky mound of Calvary stood not more than 16 feet above the roads which wound around its base. It rose rather abruptly from the western side, but quite gradually from the east and southeast, the way by which Jesus approached it. Nonetheless, our Lord's observation post dominates the town. When the cross has been erected, its highest point will be another 10 feet above the level of the ground, and the gaze of the crucified may range over the whole horizon. In front of him, Jesus will see the gate of Ephraim at a distance of 80 yards, the temple at a quarter of a mile, the Tower of Antonia at 400 yards, and at 700 yards, the great southeastern corner, or the pinnacle, from which Satan had wanted him to cast himself down. There are mystical authors who orient the cross to the west, that is to say, they disorient it. Their idea is that the look that regenerates is turned towards us, Israel and the old law being forsaken. This theory, besides being a priori and not free from partiality, finds no confirmation in the situation of Calvary. As you pass out of the gate of Ephraim, you are facing Mount Gareb, of which Calvary is a small foothill. To turn the gibbet to the west would be to make it face the hills and to hide it from the people. The idlers of the gate and the loiterers of the esplanade, the passers-by who met in great numbers at the crossroads, the folk that clustered everywhere about, the dwellers in the tents set up in the open air for the feast, all these would have been foiled. The public example made of the victim would have been thwarted. Furthermore, the erection of the gibbet and the management of the execution would have been made difficult. In every way, it would have been a bad arrangement. No. Jesus faced the gate by which he had come forth, through which came his insulters and those who were greedy for a spectacle. He offered himself to those who hated and mocked him. He lent himself to the convenience of his executioners. And, if reasons of appropriateness must be added, the new man looked toward the beginnings, toward that end of the earth from which came civilization together with the light. He faced as the apse of a church faces, having before his eyes the rampart of a world beyond which he had passed, although he had not forsaken it. His final glance saluted the temple, his Father's house, and the rising sun. And so now the cross is erected in its proper place, facing in the right direction, according to all the rules. The chalky soil offers a good grip. The beam holds, and now the inscription surmounts the gibbet. He who is to die has been stripped of his garments, first bound to the cross, and then nailed to it. His crown has been left upon his head, presumably intended as a commentary upon the derisive inscription, but in truth consecrating Jesus as King of our hearts and King of the universe. The first spasms shake the body, already mercilessly torn by the scourging and by a night of torment. The victim has been raised roughly upon his gibbet. The blood flows in thin streams from his hands and feet, oozes from his forehead, and stripes his breast and members along the marks of the lashes. The cruelly strained position allows no movement, but the soul is unfettered, and the great shudders that rack the body leave the mind in full possession of its powers. There is still a little more of this great life to be lived, a life which in the narrow confines of Judea embraces all the world. A cry or two more, a few more words of sovereign power, and one more lament that asks compassion of earth and heaven, of earth to recompense it with mercy to us, of heaven to grant us its blessings. And through it all is that glance which sees beyond all things, that glance which we shall follow as far as our sight can reach. But it goes infinitely beyond our vision, for it passes through the visible and invisible worlds and penetrates to their source, to the very depths of God.